Okay, welcome everybody. This is retirement, estate, and long-term care planning session here at Georgian Family Circle Restaurant, also known as the GC Lounge. I'm David Grossman. This is Jerry Hogenhout. Jerry Hogenhout is a CPA, and he's also known as the Angry Accountant. You wouldn't expect that, but really, he's quite angry, and he'll tell us more about that. Okay, we also have with us today Kelly Jo Darnley, and she is the owner of this fine establishment, and she also happens to be an expert in long-term care. She's a long-term care specialist, so she's going to have some answers for us in respect to long-term care planning, the costs involved, what's covered, what's not, and all that kind of thing. Um, the first thing I want to do before we get started is I wanted to ask the audience if you had specific questions. Is there anything in particular that you were hoping to get out of today's sessions? I do hope we'll have time during the sessions for some Q&A, but they should be fairly action-packed. Yes, ma'am, please.
About how if you want to give your kids a loan, and let's just say it doesn't get paid back, best way to do that.
So the question was, if you give your kids a loan, and sorry, you do or you don't want to get paid?
Don't put
Okay. Okay, we'll answer them later. We're just taking the questions now. So the first questions, ma'am, what was your name again? Sorry.
Deb.
Deb. So Deb is asking loan kids money,
How to structure.
um how to structure, maybe pay back, maybe not.
Don't give your kids the choice.
Or not. Okay. Rob had a question. I'm just going to briefly said what he said to me, but maybe he can elaborate. Rob over there. Rob was saying, after maxing out your TFSAs and your RRSPs, what other tax deductions can you have? Rob, you want to elaborate for us, please?
Yeah, if I try to make my project dirt or taxi, and I move and I max, since he's retired, their RSP deduction and then moving out, they want to keep them to self-directed TFSA. And else they're to
Okay, so we're gonna talk, just some tax strategies when we're max out our RSP.
Tax strategies on maxing out RSPs
Splitting income.
and splitting income. Maybe that's a better way of saying it, right? No, not splitting income.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Anyway, we'll elaborate on that one more. The question essentially is about tax strategies, TFSAs, and RSPs. Are there any questions from the Zoom or any other questions in the room? We'll see if there's one more before we get going. Yes, Jane.
With succession planning, if you have an elder parent who you are the POA of, and you want to minimize the taxes that the estate is going to pay, what is the most beneficial way to hold real estate that the person may own?
Minimize.
Okay, so the third question, Trust Jane, is about succession planning and minimizing taxes where there's real estate involved, and you may have a POA for your parents. So those are three questions. That'll get us going. Hopefully, we'll have time to take more questions during the actual session, but we're looking to do a hard stop at 11 because the restaurant opens to the general public at 11. They were kind enough to open up specially for us today and offer their amazing breakfast special. So thanks again to the restaurant for that. But we'll be around for a while too, though, after 11. So, you can always have one-on-one conversations with us. And of course, we have business cards and things like that. So we're happy to chat further. So now we have something special to announce. Jerry and I, we're going to be planning, we're working on a Make Your Money Rock music tour, okay? And what people, some of you, a lot of you may, if you know me, you know that I'm a guitar player. But what you may not know about Jerry is that he's also a percussionist, and he played percussion in a very successful Kiss tribute band that toured across Canada. So Jerry Hogenhout, the angry accountant and percussionist, keeping a steady beat on CRA. Writes this stuff, Jerry.
I think you do. You do.
All right. So we have a sneak preview of a song that we wrote, and this song, it's called
He didn't write.
what did the song? No, we didn't write the song. No, we didn't. Advice. The song is called Advice for Free, and we wrote it. And if the song bears any resemblance to the song Money for Nothing by Dire Straits,
That's
it's purely coincidental. Is there anything else you want to say before we jump into the song?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, David. So this actually, what we're doing here was kind of an inspiration. When David asked me to come up here and talk with him, I said, Dave, because I know David likes playing his guitar everywhere. So if anybody will let this guy play guitar, he'll play it. And I know he likes going to retirement homes to play guitar. And the fact that we're actually coordinating this with a retirement home session, I said, David, we need to create something where we can take a little musical show to retirement homes and talk to people about financial planning and give them investment advice. So the seed was planted, and I'll be honest, we got together once on this thing. So this is like really, we'll see what happens. So anyway.
Oh, the excuses are starting already. Don't worry. I think you'll enjoy it. So
Okay.
Water? Great. Hi, George.
Are we ready?
hold on.
Oh. Yeah.
Now I can make it. That's the way to do it. Place needs to be with a TIC. That ain't working, that's the way to do it. Fix me a deal in an RST. That ain't working, that's the way to do it. They don't tell you this things ain't dumb. Can you get a blister on your little foot? Too easy to get a blister on your thumb. We got to install microwave products. Cause to get you the labor, we got to move radars. We got to do the GIC. What do you get on a GIC? Let's get ready in a GIC. You're a little bagel with the carry in the vehicle. Yeah, buddy, that's little over there. The little bacon got his own jelly. The little bacon, he's a billionaire. We got to install microwave oven. Cause the kitchen delivery. We got to do this refrigerator. We got some musicals at RFP. You get it in, but when you get it out, you gotta pay for it when you take it out. Install microwave oven. Got to get you to deliver. We got to do this refrigerator. We got to do these GIC. And with the GIC cherry, and keep up with inflation. I don't even get up to I should learn to play the guitar. I should learn to play them drums. With them mama, she's got a finger in the cameraman. She could have some fun. And he's up there. What's the hell? I enjoy this. So hanging on the bubble if I got sound that can see that it works and that's the way to do it. Money for nothing, get advice for free. Jerry, advice for free, from me, from you. Free, free. We got to install microwave oven. That's the kitchen delivery. We got to do refrigerators. We got to do those R&B. R&B. There might be a better way. That ain't over him, that's what it's doing. Bloody but nothing getting tight to free, right? It's another getting tight to free. Money for dozen gin and money for me, from me, from you, me, from you, and you. Thank you very much.
More to come. More to come. More to come.
One time.
That was fun. That was fun.
So that's a preview from the Make Your Money Rock tour.
What was that?
Thank you.
When's that happening?
The dates are to be announced.
And the fee will be?
Remember, we only spent like one take on this.
All right, so let's get into it. Jerry Hogenhout, CPA. Let me tell you a little bit about Jerry first. He started off working in the tax department of Deloitte Touche. He had a keen interest in investments. He still is a licensed CPA and has been operating as a CPA for decades. Not to age him or anything like that. But he also went on to become licensed in all 5 of the different marketplaces: stocks and bonds, mutual funds, private equity, mortgages, and insurance. So he has a wide breadth of knowledge, and he's a good friend of mine. Jerry, help us understand why the interest in investments, and you also have a company, Canadian Information Services.
Investment services.
And thank you, Canadian Investment Services. And what's that all about? How do you work with people? I'll give you the microphone.
Okay. Okay, thank you, David, for the introduction. So yeah, as David said, I'm a tax accountant. I worked with Deloitte Touche for 10 years in their tax department, small business department. After which the corporate structure didn't work for me. Seed was planted. I'm entrepreneurial. I wanted to run my own business. So I left there, set up my own tax practice. To make a really long story short, I always thought the integration between taxes and investments was very important. I thought that decades ago, as David said, more so it's more evident now than ever. So I became very interested. I became a real estate investor. And so I added that to my tax business. And then I wanted to get involved in different types of investments. So I got different licenses all over over those past years. I had an MFDA license, was a stockbroker, did a lot of private equity deals. But real estate really was the foundation for a lot of the stuff I do when we do investments. I really believe that when we invest money, there's 2 very important things that we do. One, obviously, we have to make a rate of return for our clients, but more importantly, way more importantly, we have to protect their capital. It's one thing to make people money, but if their money goes down, they're not happy. So, very important part of my practice to make sure we protect capital. And to date, I really haven't found anything better than real estate, right? The good real estate. There's good real estate and bad real estate. So good real estate is a really good way to protect your money and get a decent rate of return. So that's certainly the area of focus that I do in my investment company, which is called Canadian Investment Services. And so in our world, we do basically 2 main services. I'm still a public accountant, so we do a lot of tax returns. And we do the investment, we have the investment company where we do a lot of real estate investing, but also underneath that umbrella, we do a lot of financial planning and estate planning. And that's why I'm very happy to be here today to share with you some strategies and information, because that's a very, very important part. And even more important that we're sharing it with retirement, because we'll get into it in a bit, but there's a real correlation between as people retire, it becomes more important to make sure your affairs are in order, to minimize tax while you're alive, but also to minimize when we have future generational transfer of assets. That's very important, very overlooked. I can't even begin to explain scenarios I've seen where the proper planning hasn't been done. And so much extra taxes paid to CRA. I'm somebody, I've probably done over 500 final death tax returns. And probably half of those, we have sent more than half of the money, the estate money, that's supposed to go to your beneficiaries. Half of those tax returns, we probably sent half of that money to CRA. And it just boils down to not proper planning. So I really welcome this opportunity to talk to you about this. David?
Okay, so Jerry, what are some of the most important things that people need to know about retirement planning and estate planning?
Well, again, retirement planning, so in our world, we do financial planning, we do retirement planning, and we do estate planning. And they mean different things to somebody like me. So financial planning is more what we're doing today, to rearrange what you're currently doing. So financial planning is more today, retirement planning is more, hey, we need some money when we retire, and when we get older, we need to make sure our finances are in order. So I call that more retirement planning. Estate planning is, again, making sure that all your affairs are properly structured to minimize the tax. Because there's a lot of tax. There's not death taxes. We don't have death taxes in Canada, but what happens when you pass is you are deemed to have sold all the assets you own. And there's tax implications, very, very, very serious tax implications. And it's an area that's not taken seriously enough because the problem is, again, the 500 final death tax returns that I've done, half of them we sent half of the money to CRA. That problem gets highlighted at the worst time in somebody's life. They're grieving. Somebody has passed. They're not as concerned about all this tax implication. Somebody has died. So you got to deal with that. And then more cases than not, nobody does anything about it after the fact. Says, oh, well, we paid 50% of our money to CRA and we have to grieve, and once you're grieving, well, it's never over. But you don't really go back and go, hey, that was a big problem. But the message I have to people is we've all dealt with grief and passings of people. It's a problem in your life, and it's a problem that we need to deal with. And what else I do find it's interesting we're talking about retirement homes because it's almost people go to a retirement home. That's it. There's no more financial planning. We have money over here. Oh, that's enough to get us through, and we don't do anything about it. Okay, there's so much we can do. Okay, we got to understand what happens throughout the whole process. Throughout your life, you usually give somebody power of attorney over your finances and over your health. We have two different types of power of attorney. Those powers of attorney expire on your demise. And now the executor of your will takes over. And please, please, please never die without a will. You have no idea the complications you leave behind if you don't have a will. Okay. And a will is not necessarily even going to a lawyer and getting a will, even though you should do that. There's something called a holographic will, which is literally you writing on a piece of paper. It has to be handwritten, can't be computer generated. If you don't have a will and you handwrite something on a piece of paper, say, I want all my assets to go do, that's a will. That's a valid will. You now have a will. When you die without a will, the province steps in. Everything is frozen. The province steps in. They charge $500 an hour to deal with your estate, and it'll take 3 years before anybody gets any money. It's horrible what happens when you die without a will. Make sure you have a will. Also, you need to know what goes through your estate and what does not go through your estate. Somebody asked about real estate. Okay. If you have a house and it is in your name, it will go through your estate. If you put your children on the title, it does not go through your estate. We bypass the whole estate process. We bypass probate. So there's all kinds of things we could do in order to save taxes and certainly probate. Probate is a very expensive part of the process. Probate is really, in simple terms, nothing more than the court approving. Yes, this person has passed. Yes, we agree that the distribution of the assets should be like this. They'll stamp it. They'll charge you 1.5% of all the assets in the estate, and that's a big fee too. So anyway, I don't know how long you want me to keep going, David, but
Okay, well, let's talk about some of the questions that were raised beforehand, and we also had one question online. So we have 4 questions already. So let's use those as a basis to get this rolling. Let's talk about minimizing taxes. Rob was saying, well, I don't know the right terminology, but I guess if one spouse has lower income, Is there some tax advantage there? And he was asking about TFSA and RSPs, what other tax strategies can be used?
Okay, so on the RSP front, those of you that know me know that I'm not the biggest fan of RSPs. In fact, and one of the reasons is because of the 300 final death tax returns that are done, and of the half of those that we've sent half of the money to CRA, the biggest culprit is RSPs. Okay, RSPs, what happens are basically fully taxed. Okay, again, when we die, we're deemed to have sold of everything. So we have money in an RSP. Yes, the RSP goes at cost. So everything we own in our life has a fair market value and an adjusted cost base. Everything, our car, our house, our rental property, everything, fair market value and cost base. So when we die, we've sold everything. If everything goes to a surviving spouse, it goes at its cost base. If it goes to anybody else, our kids, anybody else, it goes at fair market value. So the RSP, same thing. If you have 200,000 in your RSP, it can go at it can get transferred to the spouse tax-free. So the bigger problem is always when the second spouse passes, because now that RSP is fully taxable. And that's criminal. Okay, and that's the biggest problem we have. And that's why in our business, we do a lot of what we call RSP meltdown. Okay, we want to get those RSPs out. We want to get them out when you're 40 years old, 50 years old, 30 years old, 60 years old. We don't want to wait till 71 when you have to. Okay, because the system really, I hate to say it, is rigged towards making sure you pay as much tax as you can. It really is. There are options available to you, but the way they've designed the system is that it's very tax inefficient for you to do nothing. So you have to do stuff. Okay, so we have, we spoke with a new client the other day. They have like $2 million in an RSP. I said, you have more problems than you know about. And they're like, well, how do we stop paying tax on this? That's a big problem. So you're going to have a big problem at some point. So what we're trying, we just keep pulling the money out of the RSP. It depends on what tax bracket. An RSP, you get a tax deduction going in, and you pay tax going out. So if you get a 20% tax deduction going in, which in my world makes no sense, and you're going to take it out at least minimum 20%, that makes no sense. If you take it out at 30%, you're losing money. If you take it out at 40%, we're losing more money. If we die with these RSPs and have to pay 50%, this thing hasn't worked. So be very aware of what percentage you're saving. What is your tax bracket when you put the money in? If you put it in at your time, you make $200,000, you're in a 50% tax bracket. Yes, put money into your RSP, but we have to strategize to get it out. Okay, that's the key. Now the question was on.
Well, that was minimum, if you maxed out on your TFSAs and RSPs, what are some of the other options?
So what we do when we do these RSP meltdowns, which is really looking at the clients, not just again today, tomorrow, and what's going to happen at the end of their life, we do take the money out of the RSP when it makes tax sense, and put it into their TFSAs, because the TFSA is a tax-free savings account. It's already out. You don't pay tax. You could tell, because when we take the money out of what we call registered plans are RSPs, locked-in retirement accounts. We have to pay tax. If we get a tax deduction going in, we have to pay tax going out. With the TFSA, we have no tax deduction going in, so we're not going to pay any tax going out. So we like those things. And while the money is in there, it's tax-free. Okay, so yeah, it's very common for us to take money out of RSPs, move them into TFSAs, and do whatever else we can to minimize that tax bracket. Because when we do take the money out of the RSP, let's tax it. So we have to be aware of your tax bracket in very simple terms. 0 to $50,000, you're 20%, 50 to 100, you're 30, 100 to 150, you're 40% bracket, and 150 and over, you're 50%. That's not hard to understand. I'll repeat that. 0 to 50,000, you're 20%. 50 to 100, you're 30%. 100 to 150, you're 40. And then 150 up, you're 50. So we will take money out all day long at 20%. All day. So if you made $10,000 in whatever pension, then we're going to pull out 40,000 out of your RSP. Okay, automatically, like if you're 40 years old, pulling that money out of the RSP. Okay, in that lower tax bracket. So we do that all the time. The problem happens when you become 65. Now you get old age security, now you get Canada pension. So your income bracket, you've already made $20,000, $30,000, which restricts the amount of money we can pull out of the RSP at a low tax bracket. And it's interesting, we're talking about retirement homes and everything else, because there's a ton of people in retirement homes that have this problem that do nothing about it. The biggest problem at all is people don't talk about this stuff. And I'm an advocate. I'm encouraging everybody to sit your family down, talk about your finances, talk about what happens, where it all goes. And the problem is, and it just happened again recently, I had a client, and I encouraged them to talk to their, I got brought into the family estate. There's like $1 million sitting in bank accounts. And with their 97-year-old mother. Okay, they don't need the money. Okay, if this money is gonna go through your estate, there's 1.5% tax right off the top. Why don't we predispose of the assets? I'm a big advocate of that. Give it away to your kids before you go. Okay, you can give money. Okay, so now I mentioned this to this client, they go back to their family and all of a sudden they're the gold diggers and it's all negative now. It's all, oh, you wait until mom passes away before we deal with the money? And so that's one of the problems. If you bring it up, you're perceived as, oh, can you not wait till they pass away until we deal with the money? No, deal with it now.
Okay, Jerry, that's a good segue to actually a few of the other questions. We had a question about succession planning, elder parent, child has a adult child presumably has a POA, how to minimize taxes. There was another question about lending money to the kids, which you would either get paid or not get paid back.
Yeah, I'll address that question. That came from the back. So, uh, in a general comment, you can give money to your kids, no tax implications. Okay, so back to this example I'm just involved in now, there's $1 million there. There was four kids. The 97-year-old mother had more than enough pension income, old age security, Canada pension to pay the monthly retirement bill. So why is that $1 million sitting there? You give 250 to each people, each child. So you can gift money. Now you can also lend money. Okay, you can say to your child, hey, I'm gonna lend you $100,000 and I want 12%, so I need $1,000 a month. You could do that. You can do that just with a handshake. Your child, I love you. Here's the money. Make sure you give me some interest. You can do it more legally. You can create a promissory note. If they have a house, you can register a mortgage against it if you want. Nothing wrong with giving money away, because what I always say, because retirement homes and nursing homes are both good and bad from a financial planning perspective. So when we do financial planning, we got this little program, we plug in all your assets today, we make assumptions and what those assets will do, and we project it all the way to age 100. Okay. And then what I've done is create a little tax column too, which says, okay, what happens at age 90 or 95 or 100 based on all these assets you have today? What is their tax implications? What are we going to do about it? And sometimes we can't do anything about it. Okay, when you have a tax problem at the end of your life, which most of us will have, and especially those of us that build up assets during our life, two things we can do. One is nothing. We can certainly strategize to make sure it's minimum, but ultimately we still have a tax bill and we can do nothing. We can just accept the fact that CRA is going to get a whole bunch of our money, or you insure it. Those are the two things you can do. You can do life insurance. Now, tell an 85-year-old person to go buy life insurance to deal with the tax implications of the estate. It doesn't work. Okay, so it's good to know, the earlier you know, do some financial planning, see your financial life, see it on a computer screen, see what happens if the assumptions that you make based on the assets you own and what you're trying to do and how it impacts not only your retirement years, but your estate years and what happens on the final tax return is powerful information. But there's a question at the back. Yes.
Write it off as a bad debt and we'll.
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, so the question is, can we give or lend? Lend, so we have a question from the audience where they want to lend their children or child money If they don't repay it back, is that a tax deduction? No, it is not. Okay, you cannot deduct that. Technically, if you're lending money and if the child is giving you interest, that's technically taxable. Okay, so a lot of ways we deal with that in our world is to go, well, maybe they want interest, but let's say the interest is actually a return of the capital instead of being taxable interest. So no, but you can't give your money to a kid and then deduct it. If we could, boy, that opens up a huge tax planning strategy for me.
Okay, Jerry, we'll try and come back to this topic because there are more questions on that. But I want to ask you about working with self-employed and some of the other ways that I know you do advocate with self-employed people. For example, in the last few years, real estate agents were allowed to start up a corporation, a personal real estate and a personal real estate corporation, and you have worked with a lot of real estate agents, but this could be something that for anyone who's self-employed, where they're able to minimize taxes using a corporation. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Great point. So, and I'll kind of segue into it. If somebody comes to me, picture yourself with a job. You make $100,000. You got no employment expenses. You can't deduct any. Okay, you come to me with your T4 and say, save me tax. There's not much I can do. We can look at RSPs. That's where we would look at ours. There's not much strategizing we can do. You have a job, you can't deduct any expenses. There's not much we can do. The next scenario is the self-employed person. Okay, and just dealing this, it's funny we're talking about this now because yesterday I'm dealing with a doctor who just became a doctor. And I said, quick, go get a corporation. So before the corporation, this doctor is just a self-employed person. So we have sales, revenues minus expenses equals net income. Net income will go over to your tax return based on those tax brackets I talked about, 20% or 30% or 40% or 50%. So for that person, what can we do? Well, to lower that taxable income. But in those scenarios, if we do not have a corporation and it's just a self-employed person, I always say we have to reduce your net income as much as possible. Well, one way to reduce the net income is increase expenses. Okay, so you have expenses on your business. Okay, those expenses, and they're dictated by our Bible is the Income Tax Act, what we can and cannot do. That Income Tax Act, half of it is written in black and white, very clear to us as accountants, what we can do, what we can't do. The other half is written in gray, which is, you can do that, you can try this, you can do this. None of this stuff is breaking the rules. We're just being a little more aggressive, trying to increase our expenses so we can reduce our net income. That's going to flow to our tax income. And, even something as simple as a car, you're self-employed. Can you deduct your car? Of course you can. You're driving all over the place, doing whatever you do. So then we get into the gray area. Well, how much can you deduct in your car? Well, the most common answer I get from most clients is, well, I drive everywhere. Car's 100% deductible. I use my car all the time. And I'm like, great. So you want to claim 100% of your car? And they're like, yeah, of course I do. Yeah, let's increase our expenses. I'm like, okay, right. I'm okay with it. But how many cars are in your household? Well, there's just one. Okay, so how can you tell me it's 100% business? Like I'm on your side. Don't get me wrong. We're trying to increase expenses so we can reduce net income, but our story has to make sense. Okay, the problem with a lot of self-employed people is they think that their car is 100% tax deductible. Well, in reality, what CRA does is say when you leave home and go to your first business spot, it's personal. Leaving home is P, personal. Going to a business stop is G, business. So when it's P to B, it's personal. And it doesn't matter that you have an office and home. It doesn't matter that all this stuff. When you go from home to the first business stop, it's P to B. That's not tax deductible. Now you've come to your first business stop, and you're going to another business stop. That's B to B. We can deduct that. We can deduct the next B to B. At the end of the day, you come home, which is B to P again. If there's a P in there, we can't deduct that. Sure. Okay. So, again, when I talk to clients about their vehicles, we're in the gray area. And what are we gonna do in the gray area? Client says, oh, I'm gonna deduct 100%. Hey, you're signing your tax return. Okay, if my client tells me I drive my car 100% of the time, I'm the odd accountant, the angry accountant. We will say, no problem, let's put it in. What's the audit risk? When we file a tax return, okay, when I hit send to my computer, it goes from my computer to their computer, CRA computer. No human has touched the tax return. Okay, so now it sits there. They have the when I hit send, my computer sends it to their computer, and the CRA computer spits out a notice of assessment, which means we've received your tax return. Doesn't mean they've accepted it. It means they've received it. That notice of assessment has a date, and they have 3 years from that date to open up your tax return. Have a look at your car expenses. Okay, so those are always things that we deal with too.
Wendy.
Wendy, yes. Yeah.
So-
Sorry, if you're on a full-time salary. Yeah. Yeah, so that
Repeat the
was,
question, please.
yeah, so the question was if Wendy has if she is on a salary, which means in our world, you're on a T4, which means in my brain, it doesn't mean, it means that there's not a lot we can do to reduce that tax liability. Oh, now she's self-employed. Okay, first thing that comes to mind, let's maximize your expenses to reduce your net income. The best thing, and I didn't even get to it, so I'm glad you bring it up, is if we can channel that income through a corporation. Okay, that's the key. Corporation, if we can channel income through a corporation, it gives me as an accountant a whole big toolkit of stuff that we can do. I don't want to get into it all, but there's so much more that we can do if your income flows through a corporation. Okay, so that's the trick. Now, I'm not saying everybody should incorporate. There's a cost benefit analysis. What does it cost to incorporate? What's the cost to maintain that corporation? I mean, whatever that number is, we have to save more tax than that in order to make it effective. In most cases, it works. I know, as David mentioned, in the real estate industry, late 2022, or sorry, 2020, the real estate industry was allowed to channel their incomes through a corporation, which was amazing. I don't know how they pulled that off because the amount of money CRA is losing, the amount of tax savings for real estate agents is incredible. Okay, but it still has to make sense. What if you're that real estate agent? Again, even if we channel income through a corporation, we still take the same approach. Sales minus expenses equals net income. Okay, that net income, if it's earned personally in a proprietorship, is going to go onto your personal tax return at either 20, 30, 40, or 50% tax rate. If that income, net income, sales minus expenses equals net income is earned in a corporation, we only pay 12%. I'll pay 12% all day long. Okay, now we got to get the money out of the corporation. Here's one thing that, again, I'm very active in the real estate agent world with these type of structures. I speak at a lot of these real estate things, and they're saving real estate agents a ton of money. And it, at first when it came out, it was like, oh, I have to make $400,000, for that tool. Right, that's like the worst thing you should know. So here's an example of a real estate agent making $50,000. Okay, sales minus expenses equals net income. Okay, now, should you incorporate if you only make $50,000? Maybe, maybe not. So $50,000 would only hit your personal tax bracket at 20%. Remember what we said, 0 to 50 is 20%. So are we going to spend all this money to move that 50,000 from personal into corporate? Doesn't make sense to do that. But here's the thing that makes it make sense, at least if you believe in this too. Canada pension. Okay, how do I say this kindly? The biggest ripoff out there. Okay, I don't know how else to sugarcoat it. The amount of money that we all put into Canada pension and the amount of money we get is criminal. Okay, now here's an example, a real life example of one of my friends who just recently passed, who was 64 years old. He was a hardworking HVAC person, so he's up at 6 a.m. sweating from age 18 to age 64. So that person would have put, if you add up all the contributions and you apply some investment formulas to it, you're close to $1 million in his Canada pension account. He dies at 64, no surviving spouse. Who can guess what happens to his Canada pension? It is not a $2,500 estate payment to the estate, the rest of it. And I know his son very well, and his son came to me, Jerry, we got this check for $2,500, and I go, yeah, that's the estate from Canada Pension. Where's the rest of his money? Ottawa. Big ripoff, huge ripoff, huge. So what do we do about it? Well, I know what I do about it. I channel my income through a corporation. When we channel income through a corporation, we get to characterize the money we take out of a corporation. We get to decide what it is. Is it a bonus? Is it a fee? Is it a salary? Is it a wage? Is it a dividend? Is it a repayment of shareholders account? There's all these things that we can characterize the income we take out of a corporation. I take out a dividend. The dividend you don't pay Canada Pension on. So I don't make a contribution to Canada Pension. Is that good or bad? Well, depends how you look at it. My Canada went on 65, so I still haven't collected my Canada Pension, but there's not much there. Ever since I figured this thing out, I haven't been contributing to Canada Pension. But now the Canada Pension is almost $8,000. So if you're self-employed, sales minus expenses equals net income. We move the net income over to your personal tax return of either 20, 30, 40. Before we pay 1 cent of tax, we're paying $8,000 of Canada Pension. And that's criminal. So I'll take that $8,000 that I should be paying to Canada Pension and make sure my corporation puts that $8,000 into my own pension plan. Corporations can have IPPs, individual pension plans. You can create your own pension plan inside of a corporation. That is your money. You can use it in your lifetime. You get to decide how you pull it out. With Canada Pension, here's your check. And it really messes us up because now we have income on the seniors' tax returns. My dear sweet mother, we lost her in October. The only good thing about that is I don't have to do her tax return now in April, because every April I would go to my poor mother who collects Canada Pension, old age, very little tiny itty bitty pension. She has no other income, and I'm the one I have to tell her every year you get $1,000. Criminal. And the Canada Pension really messed that up because it pushes your income up to a bracket that we're kind of strapped. So corporations are great if they work in your life. I'm not saying everybody go corporate. I'm just saying realize that that's a very, very, very effective strategy for a lot of us. Okay, I'm not saying when you're a senior and retired, but certainly when we're in our income earning years, because we're trying to do things in our income earning years that don't mess us up in our retirement years. And that's one problem. There's a big correlation between what happens in your tax life and what happens in your investment life. And one of the biggest problems people have, they go to an accountant to get their tax returns done, and they go over there to get their investments done, and those people don't talk.
Okay, that's a good segue to a question about investments. So Jerry, in your lifetime, you have been licensed in all 5 investment industries: private equity, stocks and bonds, mutual funds, insurance. What have you learned? And tell us about that, and the public markets versus the private markets, please.
Great, thank you, David. Yeah, so as David said, I've been in a Canadian Investment Service. We kind of look at it in, we're managing money. Where is your money? It's either in the public markets, which are mutual funds or stocks, or they're in the private market, which is more real estate. And in the middle, I use gold and silver. Some people like gold and silver, some people don't. But from a concept point of view, that's the way I look at everybody's investment life. You're either in public markets, you're either in real estate, or in the middle is gold and silver. Now, the public markets, those of you in mutual funds, you're in the public market. A mutual fund is a group of individual stocks that are bouncing up and down. Okay. I have completely lost faith in that respect of the investment marketplace. Here's a little story. When I used to work at Deloitte Touche Chartered Accountants, we would take the private companies and take them public. Okay, you do that for a couple of reasons. One, the owner may want to raise capital, so they take a private company and they take it public. Another reason is all these billionaires who have taken their private companies public and their stock prices have gone through the roof in a day or 2 or 3 or a month. That's the other reason why a lot of people want to go public, is so their stocks can triple and quadruple. But here's a very simple example of what I would have gone through back in my Deloitte days, taking a private company public. Step 1, we have to value the company. So we look at your company and we say it's worth $2 million. If we had to liquidate this company, it's worth $2 million. So they want to go public, so we'll issue 2 million shares. Okay, we'll give the owner 1 million plus 1, so they can still drive the bus, and we'll go to the market with 1 million minus 1. Each of those shares, the company's worth 2 million. We're issuing 2 million shares. Each of those shares are worth $1. Pretty simple. Long story short, we underwrite it, we go to the market and hits the market, and it goes at 2 or 3 or 4. Everybody's happy because it's 2 or 3 or 4. It's going up. I was a stockbroker. I was the guy on the phone. Hey, you got to get in on this company. We're going to the moon. Get in. Okay, so in a perfect world, this stock goes up. And then when I was at Deloitte, it didn't mean much back then because it was just my job and I was a student. I didn't know what I know today. But I'm thinking that thing's trading $4 and the liquidated value is $1. Nothing has really happened. And then it goes to 5 and 6 and 10 and 15 and 20. And you look at the real value. Again, when we manage money, we have to look at protecting the capital. So when we're in the public market, you're looking at these stocks going, that thing's trading at $20 and it's worth $1. And the best example for some of you in here my age, Nortel. Blue chip stock. Blue chip stock means it's a great stock, nothing can go wrong, it's awesome. Trading at 124.25, crashed, went down to 66 cents. 66 cents was the liquidated value of Nortel when it was trading at $123. Now, I'm not saying that to spook everybody. I'm saying that because that's reality. Your money is in the stock market. Okay, the good thing on a positive note, the reason the values go up has nothing to do with the value of the asset. It has to do in public market, you have to do audited financial statement every quarter. And if you've done well, your stock price is going up, regardless of what the liquidated value of your company is. If you didn't do well, your price will go down. So we find the market just bounces up and down all the time. So again, if we're really trying to protect capital, that's why I'm in the real estate side, because real estate is a much better way to protect your capital and get you a decent rate of return. When we talk about a rate of return, we're talking about what type of income we're earning. Anywhere we put our money, what are we getting? Interest, dividends, capital gains. Okay, those are the three common ones. So some dividends and capital gains are very tax effective. Okay, so back to the interest. If you lend your child money, $100,000 at 12% is $12,000 a year. You get $1,000 a month. You have to put $12,000 on your tax return. It's good to get the interest, but it's not very tax effective. If you can change that interest to dividends, if you earn $12,000, you would only put about $7,000 on your tax returns because of what we call a dividend tax credit. I don't want to go into a deep dive on that, but dividends are very tax effective. If you have a capital gain, half of the capital gain is tax-free. You're only paying tax on the other half. So those are the three most common things we earn when we have our money deployed: interest, dividends, capital gains. But there's another one, return of capital. Okay, we pay zero, nothing, zero. Okay, so if that $100,000, if you were able to convert that into return of capital, you're getting your $12,000, and that's how much tax you pay on that money. It doesn't hit your tax return. It doesn't mess us up when we're dealing with RSPs and Canada pensions and all this stuff. So where do you find return of capital? In the real estate world. Okay, in real estate income trusts, which are a fund of apartment buildings. Okay, and these, in my opinion, are good investments because not only do you get the money back as return of capital, which means you pay no tax, your capital is protected by apartment buildings. Okay, and we all know what's going on in this country. People can't afford houses. The rental market is going to be strong. They keep it. Immigrating people. So the need for rental properties will just continue to balloon, which means those investments, in my opinion, are pretty good. Now, there's obviously, if you're not paying any tax now, yes, when we sell the investment, we have to pay the tax on what we've received for free, but only half of the tax because it's a capital gain. So I don't want to confuse everybody. All I'm saying is there's interest you can earn, there is dividends you can earn, there are capital gains you can earn, and there's return of capital. Now, what happens if I'm dealing with a 90-year-old person with $1 million in the bank or in their investment account? Should I be talking to that person about real estate income trust? Should we be moving a 90-year-old person whose money is sitting in a nice GIC? Should we be moving that into a real estate income trust? The answer is, with the blessing of her family, 100%. 100% with the blessing of her family. We're obviously not going to go to a 90-year-old person and go, hey, give me your $1 million, I'm going to put into this real estate. All the more reason to emphasize that we need to talk to the family, because there is tons of savings there. That money, most of the retirement home money, is sitting in the bank account. We're living in inflationary times like we've never seen before. Okay, and that just means we have depreciable assets. So when inflationary times are as prevalent as they are today, it is more important to look at what we're investing in and to ask ourselves, are those assets depreciating or are they appreciating? Because your money sitting in the bank doesn't even cover, oh, I get 4% in the bank. Yeah, but inflation is 5 or 6. Doesn't make sense. But it's safe. Yeah, great. That's why we don't want to mess around with the psyche of a person. They're happy over anything. The more money you have, the less of a concern it is. It's when you don't have a lot of money, because what happens with the nursing home and retirement, it messes up. It's good news and bad news. It's bad news when we do financial planning. We're trying to plan your whole future. Oh yeah, you've got enough money, everything's good. There's a hiccup when somebody has to go to the retirement home, because now we're adding $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month that we didn't have before. So we have to make sure that there's a provision in there. But when they go to a nursing home or a retirement home, that's good from a financial planning perspective, because now we know there's your cost, and that will be your cost for the rest of your life, probably. We'll add a little bit of inflation, but at least we can do financial planning knowing these are fixed costs.
Okay, so Jerry was talking about the difference. Thanks, by the way, Jerry, that was very informative. Jerry was talking about the difference between the public markets, which most people know about, right? It's kind of the standard thing. You've got extra money, you buy mutual funds, stocks, bonds. Those are public markets where the value of your shares may not, the underlying company value may not match what your holdings are, which was to Jerry's point. They sell it at $1, it goes up, but the actual value is $1. In the private markets, that's not the case. So in addition to being a mortgage broker, I'm also a licensed dealing rep, and I sell products in the private markets. And there are a variety of products, but the products that we do like the most, Jerry and I, are these apartment REITs, real estate investment trusts, completed apartment buildings where people are paying rents, no fancy development projects and that kind of thing. And with these projects, I'll tell you a little bit more about the private market. Then we're going to go over to Kelly Joe and talk about yes, I know there are more. We'll try and get to them. But then we're going to go over to Kelly Joe and we're going to talk about long-term care and what's involved with that. But I just want to say one or two more things about the private markets. Private in Ontario, private market products before 2019 were only available to super high net worth people, but that has changed. In 2019, there's new categories of investors. This is a regulated industry. In fact, I can tell you that the licensing requirements in the private market is considerably more stringent than mortgage, because I'm licensed in both. The biggest money managers, Yale, OMERS, Harvard, CPP, they all have about 40% of their portfolio in private market investments. But the average person is not aware of them. So we're here to tell you about that. As one of our purposes for being here today. And I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But first, if Kelly Joe would talk to us, please, about long-term care, your involvement in long-term care. And now you're here in the restaurant business. So she's been awesome, Kelly Joe Darnley and her husband, Todd Gervais. We've welcomed them to our community. in the fall. We've been running music here every Saturday night. They're wonderful people. And so we're glad that you're all here. I'm sure some of you have been here before. So Kelly Jo, welcome again to Wasaga Beach, and also please share with us what you can.
Okay, so I am Kelly Jo, and yes, I'm the new owner here. But primarily my business for the last 20 years has been working in long-term care and retirement. And I started in a long-term care home working for the Ministry of Health. I have my licensing and education in both long-term care and retirement homes. And I just wanted to talk to everybody about the importance of preparing for retirement. I see a lot of families who are not prepared, and I think it's important to really be ready. So the money part, yeah, listen to them. I don't get that stuff, so I'm foggy, but I understand what happens once you get to me. So in our world right now, we don't have enough long-term care beds for everyone here. So the reality is the wait is 2 to 5 years for long-term care. And you can't get on the list unless you're in crisis or you have something that is preventing you from being able to take care of yourself at home. So just a scenario, let's say you're living at home and your children or your parents are living at home and you notice that they need a little more care, but they're not like heavy care. So you're going to go look for a retirement home. A retirement home for an independent person will start no less than $3,000 a month. And that's just for the room and to have activities and have your dining and your housekeeping. Once care is required, you then go up. And your prices can go up to $15,000, $20,000 a month. And that's a true number. You're going to internet it and it's going to say 1,600 to 6,000. I'm telling you, I have residents in my home right now that pay 10 and 11,000 a month because it depends on the amount of care you need. And it costs me to pay a PSW, and we all know they all fought for more wages, so I have to pay that. It costs me for my licensing. It costs me for me to follow all the regulations that are required. So that cost goes on to you. The government doesn't help us in any way in a retirement home, and they won't help you. You have to pay for those costs, and you can stay in that retirement home until you go to a long-term care home where, yes, you will only pay between $2,000 and $3,000 a month for long-term care. But like I said, for 2 to 5 years, you need to be ready to pay me or a home like mine 10 grand a month. So planning is very, very important. There is not enough beds. The hospital is 183 beds over capacity. So they're pushing people to go into homes like mine to provide the care for you that you will need until long-term care bed opens. And the government's not giving any more licenses. They're expecting retirement homes to step up and provide the care. So my home is a full care facility. Not all retirement homes are. Some retirement homes will kick you out if you become heavy care because they don't have registered staff. They don't have PSWs. They have what they call resident attendants, and they're not legally allowed to provide care. So in a home like mine, I provide people who are legally allowed to provide that care. And so it's important that you're ready. The other important thing is to have your powers of attorney in place now. Don't wait until you have dementia because now you can't sign it. You're not allowed. Don't wait until you're sick and somebody calls your capacity because then you can't sign it. You're not allowed. Sign it while you have capacity. Sign it while you know what child, what friend, what sister, what brother you want to take care of your care and your finances. There are 2 different powers of attorneys. One is for care, one is for finances. You can choose. For me personally, my daughter is in charge of my care. She knows what I want. But my son is in charge of my finances because my daughter has no idea about money. So you can have 2 different people. There's also a very specific line in your power of attorney paper that says jointly and severally. If you choose to put 2 people on and they are jointly, that means they can't make a decision for you unless the other one signs as well. So if one lives in BC and one lives in Ontario and you're trying to get to a care home in Ontario, that one from BC has to get on a plane, come down here and sign papers so they can't get in. Okay, that's the law. So I would suggest you always have it say jointly and severally, because severally means that person can act without the other person. It causes a lot of backlog in the home when you're trying to get mom in if that paper says jointly, because now I have to chase the other person to see if they agree. I have to get their signatures. We have to wait for all this process to happen. So I would suggest you make sure your powers of attorney are in place now, put them away. As children with parents, The power of attorney is not enacted until that person has a capacity issue. So just because you have a power of attorney does not mean that someone can come in and take over your finances. It goes in a tucked in a little drawer, and when mom's or dad's capacity is questioned, that comes out. The bank will probably require you to get a capacity assessment done by a capacity assessor to prove that that power of attorney is enacted. However, capacity assessment will cost you between $850 and $1,000 to get done. The doctor can't always sign that off for you. You sometimes need to get a real capacity assessor to say, yes, mom has capacity issues and the power of attorney is enacted. So I would just suggest to have those things ready and just put them away. Tell your kids, have the conversation, talk about your finances, talk about what money you have and where it is and how it's going to work for you once you're in retirement. Because your care level will increase exponentially while you wait in that retirement home for a long-term care bed. Expenses in a long-term care home are different. Everything's covered. Your briefs are covered, your hygiene supplies. If you want, if you don't want to buy your own shampoo and conditioner, they're going to give it to you. Don't worry about that. In a retirement home, you have to buy your own briefs. You have to supply your own supplies. You have to supply your own shampoos and conditioners, your own clothing, your own bedding. We provide you with a bed and a side table. That's what you get in the room, and anything else is up to you. Transportation. If I have to send you to the hospital, you got to pay to come back home, and it's about $200 to $300. And my building is beside the hospital, and it's $300 to get back in a Voyager or any of the transport services. If mom or dad can go into a taxi, well, great, but most people are in a wheelchair and they can't, or they need to be in a gurney, so you need to pay. So have those expenses thought about and put away, and have the conversations with your families so that you're ready for when retirement or long-term care comes along, or you're ready for mom and dad's retirement or long-term care.
Any questions?
Any questions?
No. That was a head scratch, not a question.
I'm always here if you have questions. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've got power of attorney papers right here. You don't need a lawyer. The person in the power of attorney can't witness it, so you have to have somebody else witness it. And if anybody needs notary, my husband Todd is a notary, so he can do that for you. And yeah, we have all the information, and I'm always here, so if you have questions. And if you have mom or dad in a home, I can help. I've been helping some of our other customers whose mother and father are in a home. You're in the right direction of who you can call if you want help for the home.
All right, very good. Kelly Jo, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we will go back to Jerry in a minute, but I just wanted to mention a couple other things. First of all, mortgages for retirees. Okay, so mortgages for retirees is a very good question, because the typical thing is that when you go to the bank to get a mortgage, the bank first thing it says, all right, well, what's your income? And your income is likely reduced if you're retired. You may have liquid assets, or you may have some real estate assets, and most lenders out there won't consider that. There are exceptions, and I've been arranging mortgages for 20 years, so I know who the lenders are that you can work with for those types of situations. And also, if you're not sure what to do, should you take out the equity? Because the other part of borrowing money is, how will you service that debt? Should you consider a reverse mortgage? Is a reverse mortgage right for you or not? So, those are the types of conversations that I have with people. So if you know anybody in that situation, pondering what to do, by all means, give me a call. So now, putting back my dealing representative hat, private equity. These are considered, if you've ever heard the term, exempt market. And the reason they're called the exempt market or private market is because the companies that issue shares are exempt from having to file a prospectus. So that's why it's considered the exempt market. So they don't have to do that, and they're not on the stock exchange. But some of these companies are really terrific. And I just wanted to let you know, one of them, Centurion REIT, is having a a session you can attend in person next week in Toronto in one of their new properties. It's a 333 unit apartment building. Centurion REIT has $7 billion. So this is no small company. Your management in completed apartment buildings. Many of them are in Ontario, our Ontario region, and some of them are across Canada and the United States, but most of them are in Ontario. That's where they got their start. They have a 14-year track record, 14 years. And the average return over 14 years is 12.75% per year. And these are RRSP and TFSA eligible returns. So that's next Thursday evening in Toronto. I will be there. Let me know if you'd like to go. It's in the evening. They'll be serving some light sandwiches and things like that. But you can also watch it on Zoom. There will be a Zoom link. And if you'd like to learn more about private investments in general, because we never suggest that people put all of their money into any single with any single issuer. And we also don't recommend that it's all in real estate. We love real estate. We know that there's 500,000 people coming to Canada every year, and that about half of those land in the GTA and then move out from there. So we know there's considerable demand. There's a housing shortage. So we love real estate, the prospects of it, but diversification in any portfolio is important. Diversification from public assets with private assets and in different industries too, not just real estate. So feel free to speak with me about that. So let's get back to tax, because I know that's such a fascinating topic. The angry accountant. There were more questions. Let's see some of the questions we had online. And we're doing well here for time. It is almost 10:02. That clock is a little different, but we've got roughly 10 more minutes. One of the questions we had, let's see, was if you're, this was from Susan. Is it better if your kids inherit your home with a mortgage on it or not? What are the implications for the inheritors?
Okay, thank you, David. Before I answer that question, I'm just chomping at the bit after listening to Kelly talk. Just highlighting the costs involved as we age. Awesome explanation. And then I just want to also listening to David talk about Centurion made me think about a client I just had, which kind of ties all this stuff together. So here's the scenario. My client was power of attorney for her aunt. So as Kelly says, power of attorney only kicks in basically when you're incapable of making your decisions. So my client comes to me and says, Jerry, can you look after my aunt's money? And she had $1 million. And he said, yeah, sure. So we put all of it, contrary to what you're supposed to do, because Centurion REIT is awesome. We put the whole $1 million into Centurion REIT, and it doubled in 7 years. So she passed away 7 years later, but it was turned into $2 million. Now, when I got involved, we looked at who the executor was, and it was TD Bank. So, and then, so I said to my client, again, my client was the power of attorney for her aunt. I had spoken to the aunt a few times, borderline whether she was capable of making decisions or not. And I said, oh, do you realize TD is the executor in the estate at 6%? The only thing in her estate was $1 million where it started. So I said, and it turned it to $2 million. 2 million times 6% is $120,000 executor fee. The only thing in there is the money, which means they just had to cash out the money and give it to the lawyer on the estate for a fee of $120,000. So I highlighted this to my client and said, this doesn't make much sense. So the client's like, oh, that's a ripoff. And I said, it is a ripoff. I mean, 6% is you can charge 6%, but it depends what's involved in the estate. Some estates are very complicated where that fee is justified. When you have one asset and it's an investment account, and when that person passes, we're simply just going to cash out the investment. So I said, I said, here, I'll be the executor for a flat fee. It's not going to cost you $120,000. It'll cost you $5,000. We'll do everything. So getting that changed, as Kelly said, that power of attorney only kicks in when she's incapacitated. A power of attorney cannot change the executor of your will. Okay, let me repeat that. The power of attorney that you assign cannot change the executor that you have chosen. And that created a big problem here because we took the aunt to the lawyer and said, lawyer, she wants to change her will. The lawyer goes, no, I don't think she's capable of making her own decisions, so we're not going to let that happen. So here we are watching her money grow, knowing that at the end of the day, it's going to be 120,000-ish. So what do you do? So, not that it's the right thing to do, but you're allowed to create a holographic will again. You're allowed to write your own will. So I said to the client, I said, well, I'm not giving you this advice. This is not my recommendation. But if you went with your aunt and your aunt hand wrote a will that said, my client is the executor, or sorry, Jerry is the executor for $5,000 instead of TD for $120,000. When she passes, that's the valid will. It's now upon TD to decide if she wrote that will while she was incapacitated. And to be very honest, TD wouldn't even know they were the executor of the account. So that's one way we'd save that person over $100,000. So these are things you have to be aware of. Before I get to that question, I also want everybody wants to know about the house, and well, it's actually related to this question. So the aging person has a house, and they have to call Kelly. They go, Kelly, the parent needs to go to the nursing home, the retirement home. What do we do with the house? Okay, your house is tax-free. It's your principal residence. Okay, so there's a couple of scenarios. And again, whatever you own in your own name and only in your own name will go through your estate and probate will apply. So you're sitting there with $1 million house, you're moving out, it's sitting there. What do? We either rent it out, we sell it, we do whatever, we keep it, somebody moves into it. If it goes through your estate, 1.5% is $15,000 we're giving away. Should we add somebody on title? Okay, anything that's jointly owned does not go through your estate, is not subject to probate. Okay, so now when I say does not go through your estate, is not subject to probate, it also means it is not governed by your will. So you got 4 kids, you got a house. Let's put Johnny on title. Johnny's on title. The person passes away. All that happens on jointly owned property when someone passes, in simple terms, they just take the name away. Person is gone, they take the name off title. Who's left? Johnny. Johnny owns the house. But the will says everything's supposed to be split with the other kids. Do we see a potential problem? Hopefully Johnny's going, hey, no problem, I'll sell the house and I'll split all the money with my siblings. That happens most of the time, not all of the time. So it's a big thing what to do with that house. Yes, Squirt.
Recommend putting all 4 children's name on that.
If there's 4 kids and the estate is all divided up evenly, again, it's so important to look at the family dynamic. If none of those 4 kids are talking to each other and haven't spoken to each other for 20 years, putting them all on titles just, so we have to look at the entire dynamic, but assuming everybody is getting along, 100%, 4 kids, everything gets split up equally, I would put those 4 kids on title. Now you got to be careful. You put those 4 kids on title, they own something. What if there's a problem in that kid's life, one of the children's life, creditors, they now own an asset. So you have to be careful. Okay. There's also what we call deemed disposition rules for tax purposes. Technically, when you put somebody on title, you just sold half of your house. And we have to deal with that from a tax perspective. So I don't want to go into a deep dive into all this stuff. I'm just kind of highlighting stuff. There's a lot of moving parts. And I'm so glad Kelly spoke and highlighted the costs, because we as financial planners, when we're talking to the kids, and I encourage everybody, just talk to your kids about your state. We always want to safeguard against these costs because they're not cheap. 10,000, 15,000 a month. We have to have money. Okay, so what do we do with that money? It's sitting there. Okay, I know what I do. I put in a REIT because they're stock effective. You're going to get 10%. But before that, what I'm trying to highlight is there has to be discussions with the families. If you give away all of the money, and then we get into a situation where we got to pay the retirement home $10,000, we need to make sure those kids are all going to cough up a quarter of the cost each month. Okay, and if there's concerns about that, then we don't let them have the money. Then we don't predispose the estate. Okay, predisposing the estate should be a topic on everybody's on everybody's financial planning. In some cases, it's a great idea. In other cases, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Sorry, question back in the corner. It's not taxable when you die either. No. So when you die, as I mentioned before, every asset you own has an adjusted cost base and a fair market value. So your principal residence, you paid X for it. It is worth this much money. You die. Okay, you have an adjusted cost base and you have a fair market value. That asset is exempt under our principal residence exemption. So far, our principal residence that we sell are exempt. Now, one of the problems is, what happened with the house. If the parent moved out and if, 6 months later they passed away and you sold the house, no problem. What happens if it's 5 years and that house is sitting there? Okay, there's what we call change of use rules in tax. Is it still your principal residence when you move to the nursing home? Gray area. Yes, but maybe 5 years from now, the house is sitting there and it's tripled in value. CRA is going to go, hey, there was a change of use when you went to the nursing home and your house has gone way up. We want our tax on that. All kinds of implications. There is no black and white, yes or no answer to all this stuff. Every situation has to be looked at.
Quick question, Jerry, talking about putting the title into children's names, for example, because you no longer, you want to kind of disperse it that way, but if one of those down the road, when that house sells and the kids already have a property, are they taxable as capital gains, or how do they?
It depends what you do with that property. So you have the house, parent has to go to the nursing home, talk to somebody like me, all the kids getting along, everything's great, put them all on title. What are you gonna do with the house? If you're gonna rent it out, we have a change of use. So we lock in that value. So what we do in those cases, a lot of times, is we will show on the tax return the deemed disposition. We'll inflate the price. House is worth 1 million, let's use 1.1 million. Okay, that's our selling price. We pay no tax. But that we reestablished our cost base. Everything has an ACV and a fair market value. By using those deemed disposition rules of the Tax Act and choosing to show the disposition on the tax return, we have readjusted your cost base up to 1.1 million. Now the parent has moved to the nursing home and we've got a house, kids are on title. What are we doing with it? But at least it has a tax cost base of 1.1 million, not $50,000. Cottages are the biggest problem. Criminal what they do to us with cottages. I have a cottage here in Wasaga Beach that I bought 25 years ago. So if I sold it tomorrow, or if I died tomorrow, we got a tax problem. Okay, and how unfair if my kids would have to sell that cottage where all their lifetime memories are, just because they can't afford the tax on the deemed disposition of the cottage. Very unfair. And we've seen stories. And it's funny, when we file a personal tax return, in our accountants' minds, we're balance sheet, income, we're assets and liabilities. The assets are our balance sheet and our assets and our liabilities. And income is income and expenses. When we file a personal tax return, they don't really care about our assets. They care about our income. So they don't know about our assets. Okay, they're trying to find out. This underused housing tax came out. They're trying to find out what we all own. Because how many times have I met a client and they go, oh, geez, that's a nice cottage you have up in Muskoka. Yeah, my parents died and they, it was willed to us. And I'm like, okay, the thing's worth like $4 million. Yeah. Did you guys pay tax on that? No, why? Nobody accounted for it on the death of the parents. Nobody did anything. You're supposed to, have to, but nobody did anything. And I'm like, oh, so you got the cottage for 4 million, you didn't pay any income tax? And the final return, no, why should we have? Let's stop this conversation right now.
Last question.
Gord, okay.
Say, you mentioned that you take registered funds into the transfer.
Yeah.
Let's say I went down to Centurion next Thursday, took $100,000 out of my mutual funds that are registered bank here. What happens when I turn 71?
Okay, so the question is, can we move money to a REIT inside of an RSP? So I'm gonna let David answer this question after I finish speaking. An RSP is not an investment. An RSP is a bag that you hold investments in. Okay, so when people say, I have an RSP, as far as what investment you own, that means nothing to me. You have an RSP. Okay, what is in your RSP? In most cases, mutual funds. Okay, so what is in the RSP? So Gord is asking me if I took the mutual funds inside of the RSP and just rearranged them inside of the RSP to REIT. Right, that's what you're asking me. Now he turns 71 and there has to be a payout. Okay, well, that REIT is paying, it's distributing. The REITs, I've been at this game for 40 years. Every single person that I have put into a real estate income trust is happy, is an extremely happy investor. Okay, I have no problem putting everybody's money, all of their money, into a real estate income trust, not Centurion. Best REIT out there. Okay, I'm not saying that for any other reason than it is. It just is. So the REIT that you put your money into still has to pay you. That money has to go back into the RSP. So when they pay you their distribution, you have a choice. You can reinvest it to buy more shares, or you can just keep it in cash. So inside of your RSP, you have the REIT investment, but you're also got a little cash account that every month the REIT pays you. It just builds up your cash account. And that money would be used to pay you out at 71 when you must. When the laws of the land say you must start taking money out of the REIT, out of the RSP. And again, in my world, I don't wait till 71. Okay, if I get a new client, I'm like, you got an RSP. Okay, well, what's your margin tax bracket? If we can pull money out of that RSP at 20%, we start doing it anytime. But lots of people have a nice pension, which means they push them up into tax bracket 2. So we really don't do a lot of that. Do you want to jump in on
Sure,
the
sure.
private and the REIT inside of the RSP?
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of people that wanna, let's say, sell the mutual funds that they're not happy with and they want to move them into a REIT, for example. So the first thing is that we can never move 100% of any one investment, and we could never move it all into private. But we could move some for diversification. So if you decide that that's something you want to do, you sell the mutual fund without taking it out of the RSP. You're selling it, you're converting it to cash. Now it's cash inside your RSP or TFSA, let's say, for example, could be another registered vehicle too, RESP, and there are others. And then you do what's called an in-kind transfer, and we will help you with that. And we move the money over to Olympia Trust. Olympia Trust is a trustee. They're based out of Calgary. You charge $150 a year to have an account with them. You can do mortgage investing with your money inside of an account like that, and you can invest in private investments like REITs and others as well. The banks won't tell you about this, but it can be done. We do it for people every day. And then once the money's moved over, then you can purchase the securities and it stays inside the RSP. Never comes out for obvious reasons. It'll trigger a tax event if you were to pull it out. Yes, so I will also mention that I've got a few, yes, Gord, there was a follow-up on that.
I don't finance it.
Okay,
RSP has been turned into a RIF at age 7.
okay, 871.
So say at age 71, my money's in.
Okay.
Centurion, how does that?
Okay, first of all, let's clear up a misconception. When you turn 71 and you have to convert your RSP to a RIF, behind the scenes, nothing changes. Nobody is taking your RSP money from an RSP and moving it over to something else that's called a RIF. All it is, it's the whatever you have in your RSP when you turn 71. Just think of it as a different name change. Nothing has happened other than instead of calling it your RSP, they call it your RIF. So whatever is in there is already in there. So now you're in a REIT, hypothetically. Okay, it's still paying distributions into that RSP. We have to make sure those distributions that they pay are enough to at least pay the minimum that you're required to take out by law under that RSP. If they don't have the minimum, then we can sell some of the REIT, but it's not as easy selling a REIT as it is a mutual fund or whatever. So that requires some planning. So you have to make sure there's enough liquid money there, not only for your minimum payment, but for extra money you might need. Because again, if you're going to run into somebody like me, I'm just probably not going to say, don't take out the minimum, take out everything you can to get up to that $50,000 tax bracket because we're at 20%. So we have to make sure that there's liquidity. REITs are longer term investments. So we have to make sure there's enough liquidity in your RSP to meet your needs. Yes, sir.
With, even set to one very beautiful amount after that.
Yes.
Tax implication, based, I think that kind of answers part of your question. We actually do have to change our minimum sector revenues testing, that's a big portion of that. That's your tax implication.
Yeah. So what happens?
We'll repeat that for the people
So, yeah,
online
so
and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Qualifying what happens at 71. So basically what happens at 71 is they look at the number in your RSP, whatever you have in your RSP, they're gonna go from 71 to age 90, 19 years, divide that up, not equally over 19 years, there's percentages, but keeping it simple. You're gonna have to take out money out of your RIF, your RSP that has become a RIF, retirement income fund, and take that out over the next 19 years at a minimum. That's the minimum, and it's taxable. It will hit your tax return. So now you've got CPP, OAS, your minimum RIF payment. Boom, they pushed you into out of the lower tax bracket. So anything else you earn, you have a pension, work pension. Now we're paying 35% tax. It's criminal. The system has been designed very criminally. On a closing note, before David closes, lots of people I find the retirement community is all sitting there over there in mutual funds. Okay, be careful. Mutual funds, you are paying exorbitant fees in mutual funds. And here's why you're paying those fees, because you're paying, two people get rich on mutual funds, the banks, whoever owns the mutual fund, and the fund managers. The fund manager is a very highly paid person that is actively buying and selling stocks all day long in your mutual fund. 90% of the time, those highly paid managers never beat the index, the stock market index, the TSE 300, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500. 90% of the time, they lose against the index. So many years ago, somebody said, well, why don't we just invest in the index? And that's what a robo-advisor does. And the best example of a robo-advisor is Wealthsimple. They came out 10, 15 years ago. And that's all these robo-advisors do is invest in the indexes. The mutual fund will charge you a management fee of 2, 2.5, 3%. The robo-advisor will charge you a management fee of 0.5 point. Okay, so if you are somebody in mutual funds, seriously look up robo-advisors, and if you want my advice, get it out of the mutual fund, put it into a robo-advisor. because you're saving on management fees. Robo advisors are not better than mutual funds. They're saving you on management fees. Okay. David.
Okay, so that's a little bit about Canadian Investment Services, and they also run monthly free webinars.
Our website.
Right,
And
right. So, well, I think we need to wrap it up. So CanadianInvestmentServices.com, you have business cards?
Yes.
So Jerry has business cards. Go to CanadianInvestmentServices.com. You can sign up for the free webinars, or you can call Jerry. I have business cards here, and I have a few of these sheets about the thing next week on Thursday night. Come take one or snap a photo. There's only 3. Or send me an email and I'll get you registered if you want to be at that. And of course, Barry Manor. Thank you very much, Kelly, Joe, Darnley, and Todd for opening early for us today. And sharing the insights on long-term care. Barry Manor, there's postcards there and more information, and also the template for your power of attorney. If you don't have your power of attorney, you can get it done. And Todd will help you with notarizing it and such. So thank you all very much for coming. And Jerry, what did I miss? Did I miss something? You can, if you gotta go, you go. Jerry will just finish up on his point. Go ahead.
We're just telling the world what we're gonna be doing with this music thing coming up. Well, you did
Tell them more if you like. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, we started our little session with a little jam. So what David and I are going to be creating is a little musical show that will not only kind of take some existing songs and change the wording of them, but also between the songs provide financial education and information for those that are interested. So we're gonna try to create this little show, an hour and a half show where we play some music, ridicule the words of the original song, and then also just provide some information between the songs. So I think that's it. Thank you all for coming out. Kelly, again, thanks for opening the doors for us. Great to see you all again. Always great to come to Musega Beach or out to my cottage. And I want to move up here full time one day. So anyway, thanks for coming in.
I want to see ice cream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Nice to meet you. I'm interested in this. It's recording. It's real.
That's funny, yeah.